Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Lafayette City Council Candidate Forum. Before we begin the forum, I want to invite our Spanish-speaking community members to click the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and choose the Spanish option to hear the forum in that language. We'll pause for just a moment while our interpreter gives this announcement in Spanish to everyone, and then enable everyone to click the language of their choice.
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias por asistir a este panel. Si busca en la parte inferior de su pantalla, hay un icono de un globo terráqueo, puede hacer clic y dice interpretación, puede escoger español para poder escuchar en español. Muchas gracias.
Welcome to the Lafayette City Council Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. My name is Elizabeth Crow, and I'm serving as president of our local league chapter, as well as the moderator for tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. The League has worked for more than 100 years nationally and more than 90 years locally to encourage informed and active participation in government and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. We are pleased tonight to have our Spanish language interpreters, Rosabel Rice and Elena Claver. For the November 2, 2021 municipal election, Lafayette voters will be asked to consider 5 candidates competing to fill 4 city council seats, and will have the opportunity to vote on 5 city ballot issues. Tonight's forum participants include Nicole Sampson, Anise Medrano, Tanya Briggs, Brandon Stites, and Brian Wong. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for opening statement. Then we'll begin with questions compiled from League members and that have been submitted electronically online to League by community members. Questions have been reviewed by our League of Women Voters volunteer screeners and will be addressed to all candidates. We will try to ask the candidates as many questions as time permits. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute or possibly an expanded time, such as 90 seconds, to answer the question. As the moderator, I will announce if the time has been increased from 1 minute. Mandy Nuku will be our timekeeper. So candidates, please watch her screen for the timer signs. Please also remember to speak slowly so that our interpreters can keep up. After the questions, we'll finish with 1 minute closing statements. Now for the opening statements and the questions. Again, unless otherwise noted, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Watch for the timekeeper's signal at the 15-second mark and at the end when your time is up. If you are mid-sentence when your time is up, please promptly finish that sentence so we can move on to the next candidate. For opening statements, we will begin and we will roll through the questions to the candidates as they are listed in ballot order. We will begin with candidate Sampson. You have 1 minute for your opening statement. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone in Lafayette. I am Nicole Sampson. I am currently on the Lafayette Planning Commission, and in 2019, I was on the City Council. I'm a 15-year resident of Lafayette, and one of the things I love about Lafayette is its small town feel, its connected community, and innovative and eclectic feel. I have lots of experience, a broad range of experience, 17 years of experience in local government. I've also worked for the private sector with small consulting firms, as well as large corporations such as NBC and ESPN2. I also have experience working with nonprofit organizations. which explains why I have a broad range of issues that I'm interested in, including affordable housing, small business, and public safety.
Thank you. Candidate Medrano, you're next.
Hi, my name is Denise Medrano. First of all, I wanted to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. And I'm a 20 actually now year resident here in Lafayette. Went to Pioneer, Angevine, and Centaurus. I've lived here all my life, and so I want to keep calling this place my home. I'm currently studying at CU. It is my third year studying sociology in hopes of pursuing a career in law enforcement. And I'm really excited for this new opportunity to run for city council and get to represent my community here in Lafayette. So thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs, go ahead, please.
All right. Thank you so much for hosting this and welcoming me. Let's see. So I've been a resident in Lafayette for 13 years, though I have basically spent the majority of my life in Boulder County. I actually live in the same neighborhood that my great uncle lived in and my cousin. So I've been coming to this neighborhood since I was teeny tiny. My husband and I run a small family plumbing business that's local here to Lafayette. I have 3 kids. I am currently seated as a city council member since December 2019. And it has just been such a joy and pleasure to represent the voters and try, especially helping small businesses and folks struggling through the pandemic and all the things that have happened the last few years. I hope to continue working. Some of my passions are environmental stewardship and affordable housing. I love animals a whole lot. I tend to
Candidate Briggs, I'm sorry, you're out of time.
You're not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Stites, go ahead.
Hi, so I'm Brandon Stites. I've had a passion for city government since I was really young. My mom was the one that actually first noticed while I was in Boy Scouts. I was working on my citizenship in the community merit badge, and it's just something I've always been really interested in. I have not lived here as long as everyone else has, but I have lived kind of all over the country, and I think that gives me a lot of unique perspectives where, you know, people with different beliefs and different ideals. I've been exposed to a lot of that. Throughout my life, I've been involved in leadership opportunities, from Boy Scouts to being a leader in my fraternity to now being a leader in the workplace. And throughout all that time, I always wanted it to be city government, but I was never in one place for very long. But now my girlfriend and I, we chose Lafayette because of the amazing place it is. And now that we're putting down roots, I really just want to get involved.
Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. My name is Brian Wong, and I have lived in Lafayette for 14 years now. And I was elected in 2019 to serve a 2-year term. And at that time, I don't think any of us anticipated a global pandemic nor a cyber attack against the city infrastructure. So, you know, obviously the last 2 years we've been working and dealing with those things that I feel like I want to finish for what I started on 2 years ago that we didn't get a chance to do, looking at affordable housing. What can we do to increase the affordable housing within our community, as well as potentially begin looking at solutions for municipal broadband. So looking for another term to be able to accomplish those goals. And really my campaign slogan from 2 years ago, which I'm still using today, is to prepare and elevate Lafayette for the future. So look forward to our conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all for your statements. Now, for the first question, we will begin with candidate Medrano. The question is, Lafayette is a community with a strong history. Public Road, Simpson Street, and the nearby residential neighborhoods contain diverse architecture and unique appeal. What is important to you to preserve? And what should happen to balance the history with Lafayette's present and future? You'll have 60 seconds to answer the question.
All the history in Lafayette, I think, is one of my favorite parts, and one of the things that I appreciate the most. I think it is hard to balance creating new events and history, and also trying to keep the old, how valuable it is to our city. I think as long as we continue to protect and honor what has been there for so many years, I think we will do a really good job moving forward in implementing that into our city culture. So just preserving as much historic buildings and honoring the diversity that we have here in Lafayette and keeping that present as we move on, I think is really important for Lafayette.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs, go ahead, please.
Yeah, let's see. So I think we have amazing history, and I'd like to see more dug up. I loved the Rose Lawaris pool naming and all the information that came from that. And I would love to see more diverse background and history from the various members being brought up. I mean, we hear about, the coal mining and whatnot, but we don't always get all those great, other bits of information. So I would love to see that. I'm also a liaison for the Historic Preservation Board. So I do see it as very important to continue to preserve the 100-year-old buildings that we have here and not tower over them and cherish them, because they are a piece of our history and they're pretty special and pretty.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I really like about Lafayette is not only do we have a long history, but we have a pretty unique history. You know, how many towns created back then were created by women, and how many of them are still around today? And I just love like the buildings and the artwork, and walking through Old Town were some of the reasons that my girlfriend and I decided that we wanted to live here. And so that's definitely something that I think we should try to preserve as much as we can. I know that we do have other needs for, new things, but I think that if we don't preserve where we came from, that we're not going to know where to go in the future.
Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Yes. So one of the reasons that my wife and I relocated here to Lafayette was because of the feel of Old Town. We just live a little ways off of it. And what I love about Old Town is its flavor. I love that we do a lot of our downtown festivals, the Peach Festival, Art Night Out, that we've really created a central hub, if you will. And what I think is really important, and what we've seen how important Old Town is when you look at what we're doing currently with our comp plan. I know last night I was at a meeting and we had some great conversation around what do we want to do for Old Town? How do we want to preserve it? How do we want to strike a balance of what we're looking for by keeping one foot into the past and recognizing that, and then putting one foot into the future as we move forward? So again, I think there's some great strategies in which we can create balance within our community and really create that hub of or the heart of Lafayette.
Thank you. And Candidate Sampson.
Thank you. One of the words that I like to use, and I know many of us like, is eclectic. It is one of the words in the comprehensive plan, and it definitely represents Lafayette. Eclectic being a diverse mix of different architecture, different elements in our community that make it all come together and make it unique and special. One of the things I'd like to continue is celebrating history. So we talked about the stories that come through our lives, but celebrating history such as the sites that Indigenous people felt were sacred, celebrating history in the historic buildings and the historic houses. I love walking along the neighborhoods and the streets and reading the plaques outside of houses and learning about that house. I also believe that keeping these varied items together is what makes us special. So in order to keep these varied items, we need to include in the comprehensive plan and overlay districts those unique specialties that keep those areas unique and special themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the next question. And for this one, we will start with candidate Briggs. And let's do 90 seconds for this one. With roughly 30,000 residents in Lafayette, how will you strive to make decisions that are in the best interest of the city as a whole, rather than only relying on the public comments you may receive? Candidate Briggs, we'll start with you.
This is a difficult one. Thank you for that. It really made me think, because I do rely a lot on public comment. And I think there's times where I will reach out to residents and via email or phone call, or just kind of pop by, see them in the park or whatnot, and go, hey, what do you think about XYZ? And this year's been difficult with not being able to do door knocking and whatnot to hear what folks say because of COVID. But I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on what folks are looking for and where the future they're looking for Lafayette. I think you just have to keep asking questions and asking folks, and not just relying on public input. But I do know I don't know. This is a difficult question for sure. Is do our very, very best and reach out to people when you're unsure and ask a lot of questions.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
Thanks. Yeah, like Tanya said, it is a hard question, and that's because I think it's a really hard thing to do. We have a lot of people in a lot of places too. Every neighborhood has its own feel. Every neighborhood has its own needs. And I think really the best thing that I can think of is to just be involved in the community, go to community events, talk to people about, what they think needs to be done in their area and their group of people that they hang out with. And that's something that I actually heard when I was talking to someone the other day, is that they don't feel like they get heard very often, and that sometimes the loudest voice is not always the one that represents everybody. So I think really it's about being engaged in the community, reaching out to people who are going to be affected when you are making decisions for the entire city. And that includes, organizations that are part of the city. That means talking to local neighborhood leaders, just really trying to make sure that you can get every perspective in the best way that you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Yes. So I think that's a great question when you talk about 30,000 residents live in our community, and how do we connect to all of them? And I think one of the ways that is important to me is that we encourage our residents to become members of boards and commissions, and definitely play a role in the way the city's operating. And I think that's a key piece. The other thing that I think is important was that we did a community survey earlier this year or late last year, and the results showed the majority of our residents are fairly happy with where we are today. So it's always good to keep that in mind. Now, whenever we have a legislative issue, I always try and talk to members around my neighborhood, other members in the community that I know would be impacted or are concerned about that particular issue. And it's important for us to reach out as members of City Council to find those diversity of opinions. We certainly want to make sure that when we're sitting in our seats in City Hall, that we're not just voting for potentially what we feel is the correct answer, but what's best for the entire community, which at times may not be a popular decision at that time, because we are looking at something long-term and there's a longer longer runway, if you will, before we see the results of the reason we voted the way we did. So certainly I take that very, it's very important in every decision I make as a member of City Council.
Thank you. Over to candidate Sampson.
Thank you. I think in order to balance all the elements, all the information that comes forward, and to make the best decisions for the interest of the community, is to really be thoughtful, do the research, and listen to others as well, and be able to weigh all the elements that come in. So when I talk about this, being thoughtful means researching your city code, researching with the history of the community. There is a lot of individuals in the community that are great historians, whether they are historians in the broad area of how Lafayette developed, but also historians who know bits and pieces of how things fit together. And that plays a very important role. Then there's the part that people have talked about it, listening. I'm a former journalist, so being comfortable going out and asking people who don't typically come to public hearings and saying, hey, what do you think about that? That's something that comes naturally to me, and it's something that I seek out. So asking, listening, finding out how people feel more comfortable coming to talk, and then balancing everything, because ultimately, sometimes what people believe is the best interest at that very moment may or may not be in the best interest. So being able to talk to everyone and come through that that discussion is most important, because after all, that's how this country was developed, through discussion, finding what's in the best interest of the community.
Thank you. And candidate Medrano, same question.
Yeah, I think we have to look at what groups are being represented when it comes to public comment. I think personally, from my experience, I know my family's not one to go to public hearings and be involved within the community. And I know a lot of my, the people that live in my neighborhood wouldn't feel comfortable as well. So I think we have to think about how are we creating opportunities for all people to be represented? And I know that it might seem like we have to balance public comment versus engaging in the community, but I think the real issue lies in who are the people that feel like they can give public comment and talk to city council members and talk to the people who work for the city and give their opinion, and who are the people who don't feel like they have that right because of other underlying situations. I think language barriers, and I'm really grateful for the translation tonight. I mean, that captures a whole other audience of Lafayette that usually wouldn't be captured. So thinking about that, what groups are being underrepresented, and how are we as community members going to people and meeting them where they're at, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to be here at this time, you can come to me and talk to me and give me that. So I think creating opportunity and going to them and telling them we care about what you think.
Thank you all. The next question, we will start with candidate Stites. And it is, we'll do 1 minute, 60 seconds for this one. Do you support police and mental health co-responder programs? Why or why not?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if we take a look at the STAR program in Denver, where they were sending just an EMT and a clinician out when they were getting mental health calls, they have an incredible success rate. And it's not the exact same thing to have co-responders, but it does mean that there's going to be someone there who might really understand the situation a lot better than someone who wasn't strictly trained for that, such as a police officer who has many, many other duties they need to take care of. I think that's a really great thing. And was there another part of that question?
Nope.
Okay.
You got it. Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Yes, I wholeheartedly support the co-responder model, and a lot of that comes from my history. Most recently, I was the human resources director for Adams County mental health or community reach center. And I really learned the importance of mental health, especially for the community. And I think that if there's anything we can do to support police to de-escalate situations, to really give our residents the treatments and the support that they need, we really need to do that. I know I was on a police ride along, and the first call was actually a situation in which the police officer called the co-responder program because the individual was known to both the officer as well as the co-responder, and he was able to get the help that's necessary. And so that's also one of the reasons, because I support the program, I am supportive of our public safety ballot initiative that's going to be put before our residents on November 2nd.
Thank you. And Candidate Sampson.
Yes, thanks. I do support police and co-responder programs. There's a number of reasons why. Number one, they can diffuse the situation. Two, they can add another perspective. Three, mental health issues are invisible. So we don't know when we respond or police respond to a situation, is there a situation in which mental health can play a very important role. There's also a growing need for mental health services. So identifying those issues right up front in a situation could help resolve a situation to the best interest of everyone who's involved. I think I see this most with victim services, and victim services come in, and whenever you're in an emergency situation, there's a fire or trauma or something, I would say all of us are in need of some form of mental health services. And so victim services can come in and provide the connection to the future services that help us later.
Thank you. Candidate Medrano.
I definitely support the police and co-responder program. I think just thinking about, I think it seems pretty obvious, like police aren't trained necessarily, like that's not their focus to handle mental health issues. And it doesn't seem logical to me to not support that, because I think both working together could be more effective versus just the police responding to calls that they don't feel 100% trained on. And it also just doesn't serve our community well. It doesn't meet the needs of our community. And at the end of the day, that's the goal that we're striving for, is how do we best meet the needs of everybody? And I think this program is exactly that.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs.
Hi there. Yes, I definitely support this. I think, let's see, we've had great success so far with just the limited co-responding that we've had. I'd love to continue that and expand on it. I think it's great for recognizing various needs and diffusing situations. Not everyone is seeing a badge and trusting of that. And so having a co-responder, even if it's not a mental illness or something, it's just easier to trust someone that's not in a big badge with a big belt and all the things, right? And it assists our police officers too to better do their job. And I think it's not that it's a growing need, it's that we're finally seeing that there is a need and we're finally providing that. And it's so important and so helpful to provide the best services for the folks that live here, the folks that come and shop here. And it's important for anyone that either lives in Lafayette or chooses to visit Lafayette.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Candidate Wong, and there are actually two questions on the same topic, and we'll do 60 seconds, 1 minute for each one. The first is, given that preemption has been overturned, are you willing to support gun safety initiatives by the Lafayette City Council? If so, what initiatives do you believe are important to keep our community safe from gun violence?
Great. Thank you for that question. And I think the first statement I want to make in regards to the fact that preemption was overturned at the state level, I personally believe that the state missed a large opportunity by not taking action. I think by creating a preemption where local governments could enact their own gun safety measures only makes it more difficult to address the situation. And while, yes, the legislature overturned a local community's ability to make laws, what they did not do was allow a local community to go ahead and enact consequences if those laws are not followed. So that's why I say what the legislature did was really pass responsibility on. And I think that's what we need to focus on, because I think it's an all of the above approach when we look at regional governments need to act together. And I know that the Consortium of Cities for Boulder County has actually had a discussion of this as one of their meetings in June. And there was a lot of discussion as far as how does the region move forward? Because ultimately, you don't want to have a patchwork of different laws. So you need to know which jurisdiction you're in. So what I would encourage is that Lafayette looks at what our neighboring communities are doing, but ultimately the solution needs to happen at the state level. And I will lobby our state legislature and our representatives to address it at a state level so it takes care of all communities and all people versus one specific area, because that's really what the question needs to happen and how it needs to occur. So thank you.
Thank you. Just quick shout out to our timekeeper, Mandy. We're not seeing your screen, so just want to make sure candidates have time. I will track on my phone as well until she comes back. So for the next candidate for the same question, we'll go to candidate Sampson, please.
Yes. So I do believe that there are a need that the police would have in terms of creating some codes or ordinances in terms of preemption in gun safety. And I would definitely support what our police department would put forward and suggest to the city council. I think there are a lot of needs with gun safety in terms of providing safe, secure locations for guns, as well as understanding how to do logical ordinances, things that aren't going to come back with unintended consequences, things where you talk about removing guns from a certain location but not from another. So creating some consistency. In my opinion, well, I should say, in my perspective, those that are working with guns on a regular basis, which are the police chief and all of the police, and those in the public safety community, as well as those who create guns and build guns, would need to come to us and talk to us about what makes the most sense.
Thank you. Sorry for the hand signals there to the panelists. I think our operations director's screen froze, so we're just gonna look to me while I'll be off camera, hopefully to the rest of the audience for timekeeping. Thank you for your patience. Candidate Medrano, you're next.
I agree with a lot of what Brian and Nicole have already been saying. I think the preemption just causes some like conflict between state and local government, and just that confusion of people they're not going to remember all the ordinances in every town. And I think I would want to work collectively with our community to figure out what is the best solution for everybody and ultimately stick with that instead of different ordinances all around our state, because I think that's what just communicates a more clear message. And I think the goal is to keep everybody safe. And so just that, yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. Sorry about that noise echo. Hold on just 1 minute. Maybe we can fix that. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, candidate Briggs.
So I've had a long negative history with guns personally. I agree with Councillor Wong that the state lost a great opportunity to unite the state and to protect its citizens. In a way, I feel like they just kind of passed this along to local government. I mean, let's face it, I do think whatever we can do to manage gun safety, we should do. But it's so easy at a local level to pass certain things and then someone can just drive to Weld County, right? And as we've looked at past ordinances or things, even just like the mask order, it's so complicated for people and confusing for people to go, okay, well, Lafayette has this rule, but so this place has a different rule. But I think we do need better checks and balances when it comes to guns, and I'm supportive in any gun safety that our residents are wanting and asking for.
Thank you. And candidate Stites.
Yes, so I completely agree with Brian and Tanya that by the state saying that it's local government's problem, that's essentially saying that they're going to do nothing. Just like Tanya said, we can pass a law that says you can't buy this type of gun or whatever, and someone can just drive an hour away and come back and we'd never know, right? I do think that there are things that we can do at the local level. One that I'd really like to see is requiring guns to be locked in some sort of safe. It's shown an 85% reduction in gunshot wounds for teens and children when they're in the house already. And like Brian said, I would be very happy to work with Lafayette and the surrounding communities to lobby the state to change their rules. One thing that I'd really like to see is recommendations from 3 people that you know. I know that after the Boulder tragedy, the family said none of them would have recommended him. If no one can recommend that they would think it's a good idea for you to have a gun, probably shouldn't have one.
Thank you. So the next question, another gun control related question. You may have addressed this a bit, but the question is, would you support a law prohibiting the open carry of firearms in public? And for this question, we will start back up with candidate Sampson.
I would support an open carry ban in public. I think there is a lot of concern right now. We talk about what happened in Boulder, and that actually was where I grew up. That's my parents' grocery store. That is where my mother and my daughter were an hour before the shooting. And everything that I've read said there are things that, creating prohibitions against certain guns and prohibitions against should this person have this gun and what happens, that in all of these cases, this individual still could have gotten a hold of a gun and still gone in there and taken action. So at this point, I would be very willing to look at creating a prohibition on open carry in public places.
Thank you. Candidate Medrano.
I would support that. I think it would just create a safer community if there's no need for, if nobody's really carrying guns, I think we just eliminate the danger of guns being out in public. And I think when I think about that prohibition, I also think about how can we make it safer for police officers to do their job. And I think that's something that I would totally support. So I do want to make one comment. I don't know if the Spanish translation is working currently.
Let me just check ask our translators to send me a note if things are working well on their end.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking and checking. So next we'll go to candidate Briggs.
So yes, I would absolutely support a ban on open carry. I actually had a brother with mental illness that attempted suicide with a gun that he found in a used car he purchased. So I think there's guns everywhere. And if there's any way that we can minimize that and bring that down, and I think statistically that folks that just open carry are at a risk of backfiring, right? Like we've seen that a lot where just walking around, someone is injured because of the fact that they're brandishing this weapon and flashing it around. But I mean, honestly, any sort of ban or restriction in any way, shape, or form, I am supportive.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
I would support a ban. Open carry doesn't mean that you can't carry a gun. If you feel the need for protection, if you, really it's protection, a lot of people feel that they need that, especially after recent tragedies like Boulder. And I think that if that's what you need, then you can do the same thing with it being concealed. We've recently seen a lot of intimidation at political rallies from people who are using these open carry laws to be able to, be like, ha, I have a big gun and you don't. Like, what are you going to do about it? And I think that that's totally overboard. And I really just don't see a necessity to be able to openly brandish your weapon.
Thank you. And candidate Wong.
Yes. So I've actually had this conversation with a lot of friends who are police officers or members of law enforcement, and also individuals who have concealed carry permits. And the one common thread that they all seem to be able to agree on is that open carry should not be allowed because it only creates more of a sense of panic among the public. It's not a safety factor. And again, if you do feel like you need a firearm for protection, you can apply and receive a concealed carry permit. So, that I would definitely support a ban on open carry because I believe that there are other means, and it seems to be the one common sense initiative or idea that all across the spectrum people do support.
Thank you. So for the next question, we'll start with candidate Medrano. And switching topics, COVID continues to impact our city in many ways. What would you do to help small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other institutions recover and grow stronger in the coming years? Candidate Medrano, and let's do 90 seconds for this question.
Yeah, COVID has been a very big hit to everybody, and especially small businesses and a lot of organizations and schools. I mean, really anybody who we can think of. I think thinking about small business, my dad owns a small business in Denver, and I know it's been very helpful just to know that there are grants and just flexibility when it comes to employment and knowing that there is some like cushion for any how do I say, like any emergency funds. Like I know that that's very important to small businesses because sometimes it's hard to pay employees. It's hard to keep your business running when you have to shut down or people are afraid to go out. And so I think that's one of the things that I would support is just keep continuing to find grants and any way that small businesses need help when it comes to money, because I think that's the biggest issue is a lot of the businesses can't stay open is because there's no money coming in. I also just think when it comes to the community, I think coming together and realizing that this affects everybody, and finding how do we protect each other and keep each other safe, whether it's wearing masks. If we have to wear masks for a while, then I think that's what we have to do. So
Thank you. And Candidate Briggs, go ahead, please.
I think one of the things I'm so most proud of for the last 2 years of what City Council has accomplished are the small business grants, 2 rounds of them. I've also been pushing for a long time, well, not a long time, but most recently, there's a lot of great grants out there, and really getting staff to focus on gobbling those up and taking those advantages and getting the money into the hands of the folks that really need the money. And that's another reason why I'm so supportive of the ballot initiative, the Health and Human Services, because that's getting a lot of money to organizations like Sister Carmen, and just reaching out and asking those folks, what do you need and how can we help you? And let's get that help to the people truly needing it. And doing little adjustments like we did in Old Town of going, okay, well, we'll negate some of this parking. So that, like, say in front of Teo Cali or some of the other restaurants could use some of these slots for window pickup and whatnot like that. Just small little things that make a huge impact in getting the small businesses to continue to run and operate in this crazy time of a pandemic.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
Yeah, so I mean, small businesses are part of what makes Lafayette so special. You know, going through town, you just see all sorts of businesses that you wouldn't necessarily see everywhere else. It's not like chain restaurants, it's a family restaurant. So I think that being able to support those businesses is extremely important. As others have said, utilizing grants, making sure we're taking federal grants and state grants, and making sure that we can identify which, not only businesses that come to us, kind of as Anise said earlier, but finding who really needs that money, you know, and making sure that that can get into the right hands. Something else that I would like to see, I just kind of thought about this as you're asking the question, is some more kind of community events that celebrate local businesses. I know that can be hard right now with COVID, but I think, you know, keeping most of it outdoors, people wearing masks and being safe, that could really kind of jumpstart some of the local economy.
Thank you. And Candidate Wong, please.
Yes, one of the things that I think I'm very proud of our city council, when COVID really was becoming a reality, we really took a wait and see approach. And I think part of our economic development with both small business as well as large retailers, our Walmart, our King Supers, we as a community did not have to furlough or put any employees out of work and out of pay. So I'm very proud of that fact. I'm also very proud of the fact that we were able to do 2 rounds of small business grants, even prior to us realizing that we could receive federal funds to reimburse us. So really proud of that. And it wasn't just the city government, but also our urban renewal district. So all of us came together to really support our small businesses. And it wasn't just small businesses. I think we also did a number of grants and funding to Sister Carmen, Community Food Share, and also Meals on Wheels. And it's always important to keep other facets of our community in mind when we move forward. And I think this really brings forward the important question, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, of economic sustainability. And what can we do to diversify our economy so we are resilient? So we have the small retailers, we have the large big box stores that can support us. So those were the important things, I think, that really brought us through our recovery and made it a lot quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Sampson, go ahead, please.
Yes. In order to recover and grow stronger as a small business or a nonprofit, there are a lot of things that are going to have to happen. These economic downturns or surprises happen every 7 years or so. We dealt with COVID last year. That was a big surprise. 7 years ago, there was a flood in Boulder County. 7 years before that, we had an economic recession. So these are cyclical things that happen. So being able to sustain for the long term is what's very important for nonprofit organizations and small businesses. So there's two things I would recommend. Number one, I would like to use the American Rescue Plan funds to go in and build up some programs that will help to build a resiliency training, to help small businesses and nonprofits build their online presence, their broadband, and their cybersecurity in-house so that they have that sustainability. The second thing I'd like to do is work with the chamber and potentially the Urban Renewal Authority and have listening sessions with small businesses and nonprofits and find out what is it that is a need or a gap that we're missing, because those are things that we could also put into either a grant that could be out there with those American Rescue Plan funds, or we could help develop or support some program that the chamber might develop to help in those cases.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with candidate Briggs. And the question is, summer 2021 was one of the worst across the Front Range for harmful levels of ozone and other air pollutants. What would you do to help our city and its residents reduce our climate and air quality impacts? And let's do 60 seconds for this one.
Wow. Well, and a lot of our ozone had to do with two outside factors, unfortunately, which is oil and gas fracking and activity and fires that I think all we can really do locally is do our very best to be environmental stewards. I would love to see great programs Boulder County wise or regionally wise, where we can have better electronic transportation that's free and affordable and getting folks to where they need to go A and B and on time. Banning, I think cutting off our dependency on the oil and gas industry is going to be huge. And yes, my time is basically up.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
Yeah, so like Tanya said, some of it was out of our control, but there are some things that we can control. A couple months ago now, I think, they passed, the current city council passed a green initiative where every home has to be electric charger ready. Every new parking lot has to have electric chargers in it. I think policies like that are great to encourage people to move towards electric vehicles. Tanya also mentioned fracking and drilling. I think, even if it doesn't happen here, we can make sure that it doesn't happen here. And then this is slightly off the question, but one of the air quality issues, I received an email and I heard someone speak at the city council a while back about the Metropolitan Airport and the leaded fuels that they use and how that is actually polluting our entire city. And lead levels from private aircraft are super harmful to the entire population and especially to children. So that's something we should look into.
Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Yes, I think that when we look at air quality, greenhouse gases, we really need to look at a regional approach. And something that I know City Council has been getting updates and we've been a part of, thanks to Mayor Harkins, is the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, CC4CA. I think those are the types of things that we need to continue to be dialed in with. Again, regional groups, I think the consortium of cities within Boulder County is another option that we can look at. But we really need to figure out a strategy forward for all of us, not just individually as cities, but what can we as a larger region do? And I think the other thing that we've done is work to have a green building code, and I think that'll continue to evolve over the next couple of years. And certainly I would encourage that to evolve and come before council, and let's look at what we can do to take action. So I think there's lots we can do, little steps here, but more in the regional level.
Thank you. Candidate Sampson.
It's interesting that the summer of 2021 had the most harmful air pollution, but if you look at 2020, we had a lot less air pollution during that time when people weren't driving. So building the infrastructure, allowing for policies for work from home. If 40% of Lafayette residents currently work from home, either part-time or full-time, how do we continue to build the infrastructure? How do we continue to allow live work environments? Those kind of policies will help people continue to work from home, reduce the amount of travel with a vehicle, may jump on a bike, but also building onto other things. We talked about electric vehicles. It's wonderful that it's on single family homes, but what about affordable multifamily? You know, I wrote a grant last year for another city so that they could get some charging stations. Why not get that grant for charging stations at multifamily as well? We have a sustainability advisory board. We work with CC4CA, and I think we need to look to those organizations, those committees with the wise people who understand this and follow what their advice is and recommendations.
Thank you. And Candidate Medrano.
I agree with a lot of things that have been brought up. I think just making public transportation available for a lot of people, like Nicole was saying, when people don't drive, the greenhouse emissions just go down. That's one of the largest polluting issues in everywhere. So making public transportation more available, and also just creating streets. I think Lafayette has done a really good job of creating streets that feel safe and encourage people to walk and bike, and even just thinking about new programs like e-bike programs. If we could do that in our city, I think also just finding new ways to be energy efficient, solar power and net zero housing. And I think also Green Star schools. I think that's great. I think we should push that for a lot of the schools in our towns. I know Angevine is one. So just finding a lot of solutions and working with people who are experts on this topic.
Thank you. The next question will begin with candidate Stites. Changing topics. Affordable housing is a challenge for many Lafayette families. What would you do to ensure that our city is engaged in regional housing solution strategies and help make Lafayette livable for people with diverse incomes? And let's do 90 seconds for this one.
So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. That's obviously a huge problem here. I have friends that tried to move to Lafayette because I kept telling them how great it was, and they weren't able to move here because it was just out of their price range. I think that we're already doing some things with the Boulder County housing authorities, such as Willoughby Corner. I think continuing to work with them on that and trying to get more projects like that moving would be great for us. Some other things that we could do ourselves would be either some rezoning of single family homes to potentially allow for multiple dwellings, or single family lots rather. And the other one is deed-restricted accessory dwelling units, where we could give homeowners basically a subsidized loan to be able to create affordable housing on their property. And it has to stay affordable forever. And it's a win-win because the city has more affordable housing and a homeowner has a source of income that they otherwise wouldn't have. Thanks.
Thank you. And Candidate Wong, go ahead, please.
I think when it comes to affordable housing in Lafayette, we really need to look at an all of the above approach. We need to look at what we can do to have, again, I know I've said this for the last two election cycles, and I really want to push our staff to really push this through to get it through the goalposts, is the ADUs, what we can do again to make sure that all zoning districts within the city have the ability to utilize apartments above garages, in-law suites that may be right next door. But we need to look at making that legitimate and legal within our community. We need to look at what we can do to protect our mobile home parks, look at what we can do to incentivize landowners potentially to look at turning their lots into tiny homes, where we can have increased density. And we also need to really think about on where within our community that we could have higher density, because at the end of the day, affordable housing happens because of the cost of land. And if you can drive down that cost of land and spread equally among the property owners, that will create the ability for people to have home ownership. And we need to look at those solutions. So we need to look at where within our community do we have significant arterial roadways that we can also have land where we can have higher densities to allow for that. But yes, definitely, I think this is a subject that's very important that City Council really needs to address, because it's only going to get worse.
Thank you. Candidate Sampson.
This is an area that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, just today I was having a conversation and brainstorming about how is it that we're going to help mobile home park residents be able to keep their homes when we know that what's going on in the enforcement at the state level, in which homeowners can develop a coalition and buy their mobile home parks if their home park comes up for sale. The problem is, do they have the funds? Are they in a coalition that can do that? That's difficult. So first thing I think we need to do a needs assessment. It allows us to know what is in the market, allows us to know what the gaps are, what the needs are. Then we get our short-term and long-term solutions. There are some short-term solutions, like Councilmember Wong said, ADUs can be approved. If everybody had an ADU in America, there would not be a housing crisis. Community land trusts are great for purchasing house and owning the land and putting a deed on that house and then selling it to those people who are first-time home buyers or low income. And those can stay affordable for 99 years. We also need to look at purchasing land. One of the main issues with affordable housing is getting that land purchased. All the other federal funding that comes on top of it can be used once the land is in place. Adding that acquisition of land really takes a bite out of the cost. And then collaborate with housing developers and affordable housing partners.
Thank you. Candidate Medrano.
All the things that are said are great. I think just partnering with the Boulder County Housing Authority and just finding land. I mean, I live in the mobile home parks, and how do we move? I think about the question, like, how do we move from not just having people rent out affordable housing, but actually being able to own it in Lafayette? I think that would be great. And would just provide a lot more opportunity for so many families to come and live here, and preserving really our mobile home parks. I think Nicole just said that great, like put it in a great way. I think the danger of like people losing their affordable housing here in Lafayette is scary, and it definitely could happen in the future. And so thinking about how are we preparing for that, and how are we protecting the communities that are underrepresented and don't and might not be able to afford a house here in Lafayette. And I think just also thinking about it, like not just affordable housing, but how do we make affordable living a thing here in Lafayette, and providing resources for families and helping them meet the goals of being able to live here and not have it be cut off for only certain families that have a certain type of income.
Thank you. And Candidate Briggs, same question.
All right. So there's a lot of layers and things that we can do. Love the mobile homes. It's a special, unique type of living. I think that after the comp plan comes out and we can kind of work on making sure that the land that mobile homes sit on are permanently mobile homes. Also, I would love to acquire some land where folks feel safe to place their home and not be taken advantage of as some of these the landowners that they are taking advantage of now, being taken advantage of now. Along with finding ways where, I mean, don't get me wrong, the affordable rentals are great and they have a purpose and they are important, but also finding a way where folks can own a home affordably, right? And have that sense of place and ownership, and paint your wall whatever color you want is huge. And making people feel like not only are they welcome, but they belong here and they are a part of this community and they're special and important. And we do want, I know Lafayette wants that diversity. And by getting that diversity is making sure people know that they are wanted here. And my time's up.
Thank you. So the next question, we'll do 60 seconds for this one. Try to get 3 more questions in before closing statements. It is, and we'll start this question with candidate Wong. What does racial equity mean to you? And what might you do to ensure all Lafayette community members are included and treated fairly?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I know in my professional career as a human resources director, I was actually part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Denver Metro Regional HR Association. And so for me, that's really important, especially growing up in the Bay Area and a lot of diversity that they have there. And I think for me, it's that every member of our community, no matter who they are, what they are, feels welcomed, that they are part of our community, that we ask them what they need to be able to thrive in our community. It's about inclusion, that nobody should feel uncomfortable within the city limits of Lafayette, that we are a welcoming community that seeks to understand and also make sure that everybody is again welcomed and allowed to be part of our community.
Thank you. Candidate Sampson.
I believe racial equity is when race no longer determines one's socioeconomic outcome. And in order to eliminate race, to eliminate something that is a barrier for racial equity, we need to be fully inclusive in our systems, in our processes, and in our policies. And I would say what we would have to do is put on our glasses and look at everything from a racial equity standpoint. And when I say we, I'm talking about the committee in its entirety. I had a question once before that said, what is it like to look through somebody's eyes of a different race? I am not a different race, so I would like to look through the eyes. I'd like somebody to walk me through and say, how would this policy impact you? Would this be a barrier, and would this be beneficial, and help me make the best choice for the community as a whole?
Thank you. Candidate Medrano.
I think racial equity is a really important topic. I think being able to understand what racial equity really means. I know we throw that word around, equality versus equity, and equality is just giving everybody the same tools, but I don't think that's actually how it works. Equity is giving everybody the necessary tools according to what they need. And so creating that in our town, and if a certain group needs more tools for whatever it is they need to succeed, then we do that, and we research and we listen, and we take into account all these different backgrounds. And I think also just training people who are in positions of authority is important, because we will always have diversity in this town, and how we manage people and in relationship with people is really important, and it matters.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs.
All right, so the state recently passed this equity lens thing where they have multiple questions that they have to ask or run through their brain when looking at any sort of legislation. And I think it's important that we all in city council and county commissioners, any boards or commissions, do the same thing. It's all woven together. That's part of why I really would love to see a public transportation that's, electronic, which helps with the environment, free, that's equitable, and reliable, that gets folks where they need to go. And I think if we looked at every issue in that same lens, we would be doing way better off. And I think it's important to ask why and what folks need and how can we get that, and finishing that weave and completing it.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
Real quick, my apologies for turning around while others are speaking. The storm is scaring my dogs. To me, racial equity means that we are knocking down barriers that exist for some people and not others. You can't just give everyone the same stuff and say that you're going to end up in the same spot. That's not true. And that's been shown throughout the history of our country. With the background that I had growing up, I've been working really hard to understand what it's like for people who don't have that background and who have to work harder to get the same things that were easier for me. Part of the comprehensive plan for Lafayette includes not only providing leadership and DEI training for the city council, the staff, all the board and commission members. It also includes providing leadership opportunities and training for people who are interested in local government who might not currently have those skills, or they do and they just don't know it yet. And I think getting the people that are directly affected involved is the best way to solve the problem.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with candidate Sampson. And it is, are there any current city policies and practices that you think should be updated or added to help government processes run more efficiently for community members? And we'll do 1 minute for this question as well.
I think just the process of going through the city ordinances and policies to determine, is there something that can be more efficient? I personally believe that could happen, that could actually be a beneficial exercise to do for this new city council. What I think we will find is that there are city codes that are on the books that cannot be enforced. I'll give you some things. There is some information about building maintenance that isn't necessarily enforced at this point and can be. I think there's also a housing trust fund account, but there's no housing trust fund. So there are things we're going to find that either are not taken to its greatest capacity, or ones that actually get in the way and create barriers. So looking at it will be in itself a great efficiency exercise.
Thank you. Candidate Medrano.
I agree with Nicole. I think that should always be something that we think of is renewing the way that we look at what we have in place. And times are always changing, as we know, this past year. And so reevaluating what has been working for our town, and also keeping up with the changes that are happening in our town and readjusting. That way we are better off serving our community, right? Like that's the end goal. So just looking at what's been working, what hasn't been working, and what are the changes, and where are the gaps that we need to fill according to what City Council has seen, and what the community is saying about that. So thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things about being almost completed with a comp plan is the next step is looking at code and zoning and whatnot. And one thing I would love to see is that some of the building plans and came in front of city council faster, sooner in the process. I feel like often we are put in a place where our hands are tied, and I don't like to feel that way or be placed in that position. I'd rather be able to make decisions and vote in a way that is best for the community and the residents and the folks that visit here. And I think going through the comp plan and then going through all the various code and zoning and ordinance things are going to really be a game changer for decisions and options.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
Yeah, so I agree with both Nicole and Tanya. I think that looking at what is already in our codes is very important to make sure that we can efficiently move forward. And I think that we can do that at the same time that we're kind of enacting our comprehensive plan. As we go step by step through the plan, we don't have to look at only what affects that. We could also look at, a little bit of what's outside the scope of what is actually needed, so that as we're moving through this plan, we can also be looking at what needs to be changed and what issues we're running into, and figure out how we can make sure that in the future, we're not going to run into those same issues. As far as from a citizen's perspective goes, I think that one of the best things that we've done recently is the website. I think it really lets you know who you should talk to, who's in charge of what, and just having that information available for everybody is really a good connection between the community and the city council.
Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Yes, I think that one of the most exciting things, and it's been mentioned here already, but our comprehensive plan update, I think that is going to be really exciting for us to really look at our building codes, our zoning overlays, and also, there are other plans that we're looking at as well, transportation. It'd be great to do a housing study, because I think what we really need to do is make sure that we're always being innovative, that we're reviewing what we have on the books and how can we do it better. And then also how we continue to engage our residents through websites like Lafayette Listens. I can't wait for council to get back to the point where we could do our monthly check-ins and listen to members of the community when we're not sitting in City Hall, but actually out and about around our community. I know that Councilor Magnette goes out and does office hours. I think that's amazing because, again, it's connecting to our residents and finding out what they see as their challenges. So we also need to make sure that we're seeking to understand.
Thank you. So for the last question this evening, what message do you have for people in the city of Lafayette who might be hesitant or uninspired about voting in the 2021 election? We will start this question with candidate Medrano, and you have 1 minute.
I think the most common answer that I hear when people aren't going to vote is, oh, it's just, it's just my vote. Like, does it really make a difference? And I think the perspective on that is a little twisted. I think that's the vote that we get to have our voice be heard, and also understanding the privilege that we have to be able to do that, and being thankful that we live in a country where we can exercise that right. So I think that's what I would say to people is it's really important because even though it's just one vote and it might seem like it's not that big of a difference, it's one more vote that somebody else doesn't get. And when you put it in that perspective, I think it really does matter. And I think we value a lot the voting that happens in our country and in our state and in our local government, because it's what changes for us. So.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs.
So I think we're so lucky and fortunate to even be able to vote and speak our minds and thoughts through that avenue. You know, a lot of there's write-ins, even you don't always have to say yes, no, this, that. And we're lucky, we're fortunate to do that. And I think by not utilizing that opportunity, it could be to a point if we're not participating, I wouldn't say it would be taken away, but I think it's ideal and important to utilize those opportunities whenever you can and use your voice. And there's times that your person or your belief doesn't win, but it still counts. It's still there, and your voice was still heard, even if it is 52 versus 48%. That speaks. It really does, even if you're in the 48%.
Thank you. Candidate Stites.
So voting is the basis that our whole country was founded on. It's an amazing right to have, as everyone has said. And I truly believe that local government is where you can really see your change that you want right in front of you. You know, if you're voting for someone in the state or the federal government, sure, they might make things that are going to change, but local government is really where you can see exactly what you want to happen. And your vote does matter. There aren't a lot of people that do vote, you know. There are a lot of elections that go down to exactly one vote. So I would just encourage everyone to, grab their ballot if they haven't already and give it a shot.
Thank you. Candidate Wong.
Yes, one important date always is very important to me, and that's November 1996. And that was the first election that I was old enough to vote in. And, you know, being the grandson of 4 immigrant families who came to the United States without that ability, they taught me that it was very important to participate in government, that it was important for you as a resident to study the issue and make a decision. And so that has been ingrained in me since I was little. And I remember going to vote with my grandparents and sitting in that ballot and watching them, or in that booth, and watching them make their decision. So I would encourage anyone to please do not pass up the opportunity. It is something that is very unique and special that we have here, and that we should continue to ensure that we pass on to our children the importance of participating in our government, especially local government.
Thank you. And Candidate Sampson.
Hi, voting is powerful. It gives you an opportunity to decide on the quality of life you want. It gives you an opportunity to speak up and say, this is important to me in my community. You get to influence what happens by voting. And we're all in this together. So if we all don't vote, we're not moving the needle forward towards positive progress. Now, we don't always get a chance to vote on things. We don't get to vote on the free agents that go into the Broncos, or who's going to be the first round draft pick, or who gets first chair in the Colorado Symphony. Let's look at this just like that this is our opportunity to get out there and vote. And I challenge Lafayette residents to have a higher percentage of votes than any of our neighboring communities.
Thank you all for such great answers to all of these questions, and thanks to community members and league members who submitted them. Now we're going to go to closing statements, and for closing statements, we will go in reverse ballot order. That means we'll start with Candidate Wong, and you have 1 minute each for your closing statements. Go ahead, please.
All right. Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this evening's event. I just want to say that to the residents of Lafayette, I would be honored to be given a second term on City Council to really complete those things that we did not, or that I did not have the opportunity to do, including municipal broadband, begin planning for that, because that is going to take a long time for us to implement, but also affordable housing, and then also ensuring that we continue to grow our open space. So please, I'd love to earn your vote. You can check out my website at www.brianwonglafayette.com. Please feel free to reach out, have a conversation. Love to chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Candidate Stites, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I just want to thank everybody for their time. The League of Women Voters, anyone from Lafayette that's watching currently. I'm just very grateful to have the opportunity to run and to potentially represent Lafayette. I've had such a great experience so far talking to my neighbors, just constituents all over town, really, about what's important to them. And I really look forward to working with them to find solutions to those problems and to continue to make Lafayette a place that people from all walks of life can live in. And again, like Brian said, I would love to earn your vote. I would love to talk to you. My website is brandonforlafayette.com. That's spelled out FOR. And shoot me an email, shoot me a text, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again for having me, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Candidate Briggs, go ahead, please.
All right, so thank you so much for hosting. This was it was challenging and enjoyable. And I have been so honored to be able to serve Lafayette for the last 2 years, and I'd be super honored to continue serving and helping folks, small businesses, or anyone that is in need. I mean, I do have a Facebook and a website, but honestly, just if you have any concerns or questions or interests, just call me or text me. My personal cell is public on the website, 720-840-8039. I will chat with you direct at any point in time. It's been a great experience. And yeah, if you have any concerns or anything, just call me up.
Thank you so much. Candidate Medrano, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks again to the League of the Women Voters for hosting this forum. It's been a really fun and nerve-wracking experience for me. Like Brian said, I'd be honored to represent this community. I think even now, I just feel really proud to be a community member here and living here my whole life. It's just a place where I want to keep investing, and I see the value in investing in this place. And if I get the opportunity to do that, I am excited for the new learning and growing opportunities that I will get to do. So thanks so much for listening, and thanks again.
Thank you. And Candidate Sampson, go ahead, please.
I too want to thank the League of Women Voters, and I want to put out a plug for them. They have their Vote 411, which tells everybody not only about the candidates, but all the ballot issues that are on the Lafayette ballot. You should all be receiving a mail-in ballot here in the next day or so. I want to say that I love Lafayette. I loved it when I chose Lafayette, and I love it here 15 years later. And I want to continue to have Lafayette be the wonderful place that we all chose to live. And that's my main reason for being on City Council. So if you're interested in learning more about me, please visit my website. It's votefornicoles.com. That's VOTE, the number 4, Nicole, NICOLES.com. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to thank all of our candidates, not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work, and we really appreciate your efforts. Thank you to our League Candidate Forum volunteers, including the League's invaluable Operations Director, Mandy Nuku, and our Candidate Forum Coordinator, Josephine Porter. This forum will be available for viewing. Please go to the League's website at lwvbc.org for the link, or visit the League of Women Voters of Boulder County's YouTube channel. And finally, thanks to Lafayette voters for participating tonight as viewers. It's up to all of us to respect, uphold, and protect our democratic process and ensure that it works for everyone. Too many people have suffered and then succeeded in the struggle to secure voting rights for us not to use them. It starts with being an informed and active voter. To check out other important issues affecting our communities, including state ballot issues, visit our League voter information website, vote411.org, for all the election information you need. And finally, the League of Women Voters of Boulder County works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend democracy. If you want to lend your time and skills to encourage civic engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. All the information you need is at lwvbc.org. With that, thank you again and have a wonderful evening.